Let's talk a little bit about Brexit because I haven't discussed it in a while, and I'm sure a lot of people that are from the United States or outside of Britain would want to know what's going on. The most single misunderstanding, and I think this is where both Remainers and Leavers can't see eye to eye with each other, is that most people don't even want to address why people actually voted to leave. You don't really find this reason in the press. But if you go online or you talk with other people, you will see that they will tell you that the main reason they wanted to leave was because of sovereignty. They want Britain to be able to govern its own laws. They want the people who make the laws in Britain to be held accountable by the public. They do not want the laws to be dictated from foreigners like France and Germany. And they also never consented to being part of a federal superstate, which is what the European Union is trying to become. The people from the European Union, they understand this, which is why they try to keep the European Union army a secret. And only after the Brexit referendum did they announce the plans for having a EU army. I made a lot of videos about this. I showed a lot of clips and politicians just saying, oh, no, there's not going to be an EU army. And after the referendum, literally the next day, they announced the plans for the EU army. So this is the main thing that a Brexiteer cares about. If you are a Remainer and you want to convince a Brexiteer to become a Remainer, if you're not going to address and explain to him why it's better that Britain is being ruled by Germany and France, if you don't explain to him why it's better that the politicians have no accountability to the people, then you're not going to win him over. You're not addressing the core issue. You're definitely not going to sway that person. And what's interesting about this is that the Remainers generally believe that the Brexiteers are xenophobic because they don't want to take more immigrants. As if Britain would be outside of the European Union, you just couldn't vote for politicians that would want open borders. You wouldn't be able to, I don't know, vote for the Labour or Lib Dems in office and just have more immigrants into Britain. As if this would be an offer completely off the table, that the only people in Europe that are for open borders are German people. And without the EU, you're not going to realize whatever, I don't know, xenophilic ideology you have there. But that is like one of the main points. Now, for the Remainers, their main point is the economy, allegedly. Like, they view themselves as if leaving the European Union, it's going to be financial collapse for Britain. Now, from what I noticed, most Brexiteers understand the economic argument and they are willing to take a financial hit in order to get their sovereignty back. Like, they value the ability of self-government and the ability to hold the politicians accountable to be more important than the financial aspect. What I personally don't understand is why is it when the President of the United States, which is one of the richest nations in the world, and it's one of the only self-sustaining nations in the world, decides to go to London, which is one of the biggest remaining cities, he gets mocked, ridiculed, and has like all of this, I don't know how to even call it, like immature protest against him. Like, if the Remainers are really concerned about the economy, surely they would be the most interested in having the United Kingdom do deals with another powerful faction of the world that is just as wealthy, if not more so, than the European Union. So, you know, it's a little bit weird to understand your economic concerns when I don't see a single remaining politician coming up and saying, hold on a little bit, you know, like Donald Trump, you know, maybe we disagree with him ideologically, but we just want to do trade here. Like, we don't agree with him on every issue that he has. However, we do want to trade with America. Like, Donald Trump is not a dictator. He's not going to be forever. The American people are going to have another election soon. You know, it's going to be another president. What's important is for our countries who have historically worked together to continue working together. You don't get to see that. Now, of course, some of the Remainers might say, well, you know, it's the principle, like, we don't agree with this politics. And it's like, yeah, since when does Britain agree with the politics of other nations in order to do trade? Like, they're dealing with Qatar, you know, they have trades with Saudi Arabia, they have trades with China, I mean, they don't agree with the leaders of these nations, which are far more dictatorial and fascist than the United States. So, like, it just doesn't make sense. To me, it seems that they just view the European Union as being good, and they look for whatever argument they can in order to justify remaining in the EU. Now, feel free to correct me if you're a Remainer and you're listening to me, and you can make sense of this, then feel free to explain to me why this is the case, why you think this is happening. I would even be willing to have you on a debate just to manage to, get into my head. How on earth can you claim you're concerned about economics and then at the same time mock the US president who comes to Britain for the single purpose of giving you a deal? But anyway, right, so this is the situation, right? Overall, at least these are the claims. The Remainers, they want sovereignty. The Remainers, they want economics. The Brexiteers want sovereignty. And what seems to be happening right now in the United Kingdom Parliament is that you have a lot of people which, if you look into them, they have ties to the European Union. I looked into 3 or 4 of the Lib Dems. Usually they got family members with important business deals in the European Union, like they got financial investments in remaining in the European Union. So they are trying everything that they can in order to convince other people to remain in the EU and to basically manage to go against the referendum that Britain had. They want to make sure that the country remains in the European Union, and it goes to really weird and I would even say like undemocratic means. Like there is this Lib Dem woman which when you had a referendum regarding Scotland to remain in the UK, she was fine with the referendum and she decided, right, we're not going to have a second referendum on the issue, but she wants a second referendum with the European Union. Now, the idea of a second referendum is something that they constantly said, it's like, what's bad for democracy to have another referendum? Which is really stupid, in my opinion. It's like saying, all right, Obama won the elections, but I think the people who voted for Obama were misled. I think the people who voted for Obama were uneducated. I think a lot of people that were old voted for Obama, and they probably died off. So it's not fair that what they voted for will affect the future younger generations. So let's have another vote before we put Obama. Let's have another vote. I mean, what is undemocratic about having more votes, right? Can you imagine just how stupid this argument sounds? Like looking into Britain, let's say Labour wins, and people will say, well, we need to have another vote before we can allow Corbyn to take the reins. I mean, it's what is undemocratic? Let's wait 3 more years and have another vote while the Tories remain in power. So this is like the argument of the people who constantly want another vote. It's like, okay, if you want another vote, that's fine. But first leave the EU and then have another vote, right? Like first do what the vote was there. I mean, when people vote in Parliament for a legislation, like for example, they vote to increase a certain tax. Can the people that are supposed to pay the tax say, well, I think Parliament should just have another vote? I think the parliamentaries that voted initially were uneducated on the issue. They just need to have another vote, and then I'll pay my taxes. Like, this is not how democracy works. It was never like how it works. They just came up with new reasons in order to try to prevent the United Kingdom from exiting the European Union. Now, let's talk a little bit about the negotiations between UK and the European Union. It's very important to understand their interests, right? Like, it's like a divorce. A divorce between a possessive husband, which is the EU, which doesn't want the wife to leave, and a wife that, let's say she is rich and she wants to take her shit that belongs to her and leave the marriage. Now, the European Union definitely has no interest in making a deal. The reason the EU doesn't want to make a deal is because once Britain leaves the European Union, there is nothing stopping the EU for making a deal then. They are perfectly capable, and there is literally nothing preventing them, that after a no deal is made, they will just start making deals wherever they feel comfortable, right? So for example, let's say they want a deal on scientific cooperation. between the UK and the EU. Okay, Britain lives with no deal. Next month, you have people from the EU approaching Britain and going like, well, let's have a deal regarding this. So for them, it's completely advantageous to just wait and use the no deal fear mongering in order to spook and scare both the British parliamentary and the British people by going like, oh, if you're going to leave with no deal, Britain is going to become a hellhole. You know, it's going to be worse than a third world nation. Your entire economy is going to collapse. You're not going to be able to survive. Right? It's going to be the apocalypse. They can do that. They got nothing to lose. And this is what the European Union is doing right now. Like they offer Britain the worst deals imaginable, the worst deals possible, knowing that Britain would either deny them, or if they accept the deals, it's going to be like being defeated in a war. I mean, the previous deal, the Checkers plan that Theresa May was supposed to accept, it was like a capitulation. It would turn the United Kingdom in a vassal state to the European Union. Basically, it would be like not leaving, just giving away their rights to vote within the EU. So obviously a lot of, like, it wouldn't satisfy the Remainers, because even the Remainers who are like, well, you know, we don't really care about sovereignty, but this is a little bit too much. And it wouldn't satisfy the Brexiteers because, like, no, we wanted to leave. Again, and you had people like Thunderfoot coming up and going like, I told you so. It's like seeing a couple, right? And the wife is not happy with the marriage. She wants a divorce. And the husband, you know, divorces her but kidnaps her into Saudi Arabia, locks her in a basement where Thunderfoot comes. It's like, I told you you shouldn't get a divorce. You know, like that is the level of understanding of politics of certain people. Which is fine, like I completely get it. You know, Thunderfoot is more occupied with science and, you know, other more important human pursuits rather than try to look at it from a political point of view, where you try to understand sovereignty and how contracts between nations should be signed if the nations allegedly respect each other. But yeah, this is the position that the European Union is in. It's an incredibly strong position where they're not really affected that much if they get a no deal, because they can just start making deals after Britain has left. They can afford delaying this as much as possible, because every time Britain asks for a delaying of Brexit, they're going to have to pay millions of pounds to the European Union. And they also have a lot of sympathizers within the British government. And these sympathizers, like, I never use the word on my channel, like, because it's a very harsh word. I never used it willy-nilly, but yeah, they are legitimately, by the definition of what you would call a traitor. Like, they represent the interests of a foreign state above that of the interests of the United Kingdom. And let me give you an example of why I say this. Now, as I mentioned before, you know, this is a divorce, and both the European Union and Britain have mutual exclusive interests. Like, when you have a divorce, you know, both parties, they want to take as much as possible from the matters. They want to take their things back. They want to take a bigger chunk of the things that they worked in common. They want to take the kids. They want to take the pets, right? Like, every person wants to leave the marriage while satisfying their own interests as much as possible. And in order to decide who gets to have more things, you have a negotiation, right? Like, you're going to talk. It's like, all right, I get the house, you get the kids, you know, like that type of thing. But the British government just made it impossible for the representative of Britain, Boris Johnson, to negotiate. The reason I'm saying this is that they made it impossible for Boris Johnson to have a no deal. Now, what this really means is that, imagine you are divorcing your wife, and the judge tells you that the house that you have, which is the object of the dispute, has to be sold, and has to be sold to the wife's father. Like you got no choice, right? Like you're forced to sell it. And you can't sell it to whomever you want. You're forced to sell it to the wife. Well, at this point, the wife's father can just go like, hey, I'll pay you $1 for it. And you can't say no. Like, what type of negotiation is that? You got really no room to negotiate anymore. Because normally you would be like, well, I know you want this house. You know, you pay me this amount, which I consider to be fair. Because if not, I'll sell it to someone else. So that's how you negotiate. You know, that's really how you basically say, you want something. This is what I want in exchange. If you are not willing to give me what I want, I will not do the deal. This is how every negotiation works. But right now, like, Britain legitimately has nothing to negotiate. Not only that, but the European Union knows about the fact that they are not allowed to have a no deal. So they know that if they just refuse to give them a deal, eventually they will just have to come to the discussion table and agree to whatever the EU is saying. So, you know, because of these traitors that, again, like, it's a very harsh word, but I just can't see it any other way. Because had the EU actually had spies within the British government, like, had they legitimately got their people in the British government, I don't see what their people would have been able to do worse than the Lib Dems and Labour have already done. Like, I don't see what extra they could have done. I generally do not see what more could they have done. You know, if they would legitimately have people taking orders from Guy Verhofstadt himself. So, you know, any person that's from the outside looking at this is absolutely bewildered. I genuinely do not know what is going on in these politicians' brain if you were to think that they represent the interests of the United Kingdom. Which clearly they do not, because if you look at their Twitter, they definitely ask Guy Verhofstadt, it's like, oh, if we do this, will you give us another suspension, Guy, please? Like, it's not a position between the representative of a state with the representative of another foreign power. It is a position of submission. It is a position of waiting for orders from the foreign power. And anyone who follows these people on Twitter will know what I'm talking about. But even if you don't follow them on Twitter, you will see that there is a huge list of signatures from the Lib Dems sending it to the European Union and saying, oh, please don't lose faith in Britain. Oh, we don't want to leave. Oh, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, I mean, it is just bizarre. It's like, I don't think I know of any other example in human history where this has happened. Where there wasn't a conflict, there wasn't a war, and one nation just wants to subjugate itself towards another nation, even though they should be on equal footing. Because you need to take into account that the European Union needs Britain. The European Union wants to take in more countries, the European Union wants an army, and Britain was its second biggest payer, was their second pay piggy. They do not want to lose their pay piggy. It's important, like, constantly I see these articles. It's like, oh, leaving the EU is going to be bad for Britain. Oh, Britain is going to go into the apocalypse, and there's going to be zombies and big plague rats and Skaven and everything that's horrible is going to happen to Britain. It's like, I don't care. I don't live in Britain. I live in the EU. What's going to happen to the EU? You know, how much taxes will I have to pay more because the EU's pay piggy is now leaving? That's the question that I care. And this is something that's not covered by the press. And it's not covered because it's very uncomfortable for the press to decide, like, what's going to happen if Britain decides to become a fiscal paradise, for example. If they legitimately lower the taxes way beyond what the EU can lower, and EU companies are just going to move to Britain. What then? Huh? Oh, we don't want to talk about that because it's uncomfortable, yeah. So, this is why this whole situation is really messed up. Now, I generally don't know what's going to happen, but it's not good for British democracy. I'm glad I don't live in Britain, to be honest. You know, at least in Romania, I understand its corruption, but in Britain, I do not understand this fetishism, this unwavering loyalty that certain politicians have towards the EU. Now, I do understand the ones that have financial interest in the EU, or have relatives that have financial interest in the EU. Yeah, I get what they're doing. You know, it's fucking disgusting, but at least I understand. But there's other people that just ideologically love the EU. And these people are screaming about Britain being fascist. Meanwhile, they don't scream about the EU being fascist. You know, they're like, oh, Boris Johnson wasn't elected, but we're not going to allow another snap elections. But Ursula von Leyen wasn't elected. Did you vote for her? Oh, I know. No. The people you voted for the EU, they voted for her. Yeah, but when they voted, it was just one name on the list. How on earth is that not fascist? How on earth can you look at me with a straight eye and tell me that is normal? Why is the person negotiating Brexit on behalf of me a person from Belgium that was just crushed in the Belgian elections? Guy Verhofstadt lost the Belgian elections with A+. Like, people hated, they despised him, and yet now he is negotiating on behalf of me. How can I punish him democratically? Like, how can I vote against him if Brexit fails to appease my interests and the Romanians' interests? There's no way. So what the fuck are you talking about, like, fascism? If you think Britain is fascist, my God, like, the European Union should look like Nazi Germany to you. So, you know, like, these are the conversations that people won't want to have. And I'm sorry for the little rant, but I just wanted to express my ideas so that unless there is a video where, you know, I can go back over the years and see what I said and compare it to the situation from, I don't know, 2025. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the next video.